Hey guys, so I'm going to teach you multiplication. This is going to be a very quick introductory lesson or a review lesson depending on how you approach this. So we're going to start very basic. We're going to add one little step along the way and we'll go from there. So first question, very basic. How do we multiply one digit by one digit? We simply take the top number, we multiply it by the bottom number, and we put our answer in here. So if I have one group of one thing, so one group, one's in it, the answer is 1. This is where I write my answer. If, let's say, I had a very simple, I'm not going to erase this, let's say it's 2 by 1, and I'm trying to decide, does the bigger number have to be on the top or the bottom? Let's watch this. Let's see what happens, what the difference is between 2 groups of 1 and 1 group of 2. So if I have 2 groups of 1, so that's like 1 and 1, my answer is going to be 2. If I have 1 group of 2, no other groups, my answer is still 2. So the nice thing, as you guys can see, is that it doesn't matter if I'm multiplying one digit by one digit. If the bigger number is on the top or the bottom, the answer is the same. So let's pretend now we're multiplying 1 by nothing. If I have one group of nothing, so let's say in my hand, I'm going to put 1 of nothing. One group of nothing. I have a whole lot of nothing, but I've done it once. I still have a whole lot of nothing. So my answer is going to be nothing. So 0 can throw us off, but if you think of 0 not as 0 but as nothing, it makes it maybe a little bit easier to understand. Okay. Let's pretend now I'm trying to multiply 2 times 3. What this is asking us is it's saying we're either going to have 2 groups of 3. So here's a group, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I've got 2 groups of 3, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or it's saying I'm going to have 3 groups, 1, 2, 3, 3 groups of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it doesn't, either 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3. Our answer is going to be 6. I'm going to write the 6 right underneath, 2 times 3. Let's pretend now I have a bit of a harder question because my number is going to be bigger than 9. Every time we have a single digit, we can have one column, and that is nice and easy for us. But the minute we have a second column, it makes it a little bit more confusing. So here it's asking to have 5 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 5. So let's do this very visually, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right here I've got 5 groups of 3. I'm counting by 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So my answer is 15 if I have 5 groups of 3. Okay, 5 groups of 3. Let's say I want to do it the other way, and I want to have 3 groups of 5. So I'm going to have, here are going to be my 3 groups. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I count this up, it's 5, 10, 15. My answer is 15. So whether I have 5 groups of 3, 3 groups of 5, my answer is 15. So here's the tricky thing, is let me show you how we do this. 15 is our answer. We have to think in columns. If I'm dropping, let's say, I don't know, a quarter off of a building or something, it's gonna fall down straight down. It's not gonna go woo and kind of like float all over the place. It's just, we need columns. Our numbers add up and down, straight up and down. So my right-hand number goes on the right. My left-hand number goes up on the left, on top of whatever number would normally be here. We need to do this even if there's no numbers here, because later on when we add more and more numbers, this little number that we have to kind of carry over, it has to go somewhere. In this case, because we have nothing and nothing here, nothing is the same as 0. So if it's a 0 and a 0, I'm basically adding 1 plus 0 plus 0. So watch, in my hand, I've got one thing, okay? I'm going to add more nothing to it and more nothing to it. So I've got 1, nothing, and nothing. I should just have 1, okay? So my 1 is going to basically fall all the way down here and end up on the left-hand side. So what originally looked like 5 times 3 is going to look like this. I'm going to have one number underneath the top 2 numbers, and I'm going to have another number underneath nothing. So this is how we multiply 2 numbers that are under 9 with an answer that becomes over 9. So let's do now 2-digit numbers. This is kind of tricky. So 12 times 3. When we multiply, unfortunately, we have 2 things going on. We have multiplication and we later have addition. So it gets very confusing. So if you're at all thinking, this is really hard, it is, because it is hard. So we need to think of this like a clock that goes backwards. So normally a clock would go like 12, 1, 2, 3. We need to think of it as a clock going 12, 11, 10, 9. It's going, working its way backwards. So when we multiply, we're going to work our way from this bottom number, and we're going to multiply 3 times 2, and then we're going to go 3 times 1. So the first thing we do is bottom to top, and then bottom to top left. So 3 times 2 is 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my 2 groups of 3. So 6 is my answer for 3 times 2. Now I'm finished with my 2. I can cross it off. I'm going to go over to the 1, 3. So now I'm working my way left. Now I'm going to go 3 times 1. Sometimes it's nice just to write it out. 3 times 1 is 3. And I'm going to write it right here. And then I'm done. That is how I multiply 2 digits by 1 digit with nothing over 9. All right. I like to throw in the questions with 0 because 0 is really challenging. So 12 times 0. We have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to figure out here? We have 12 groups of nothing. So let's pretend that this is where I'm going to write in my 12 groups of nothing. Ready? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've added nothing to my box. I have no numbers. So there's nothing. There's literally nothing. It's 12 groups of nothing. I could also have no groups of 12. So in my box, I'm going to write in no groups of 12. Ready? Done. I didn't write in any groups of 12. That's what the nothing means. So you might be tempted to want to say, well, there's a number. I should be having a number underneath the number line. The number is 0. Because even if I do my backwards clock thing, and I start with 0 times 2, 0 groups of 2 is 0. Ready? Here's a group of 1, and now a group of 2. There's nothing. So here's my 0. Now I'm going to move left in a counterclockwise motion. No groups of 1 is nothing. No groups of 1, there's none. If I invite no people to my party, I'm sending out 0 invitations. No one's coming to my party. 0. So 12 times 0. Let's now do something that's a little bit more challenging. I'm going to have to multiply something that is larger than 9, which is why this is challenging, because now we have to carry over. Nobody likes that. It's terrible. So, like a backwards clock, we start top to bottom, or sorry, bottom to top, and then we work our way left. So, 6 times 2 equals 12. So this is where, as again, if math is not your thing, you might want to write everything down so you can see it. Sometimes it can be hard to do all of this in your brain. So here's my number 12. I'm going to write this right here so that it's a nice big number. My right-hand number stays on the right-hand side. My left-hand number comes way up here on top and goes on the left-hand side. Before, when we did this, in one of our other questions, we didn't have a number there, so it looked kind of odd because it was just this floating number. When we have a number, it sits on top of that number. So I first started, let me just recap. I went 6 times 2 to make 12. My right-hand number went on the right, the left-hand number came up here, and now it's just kind of hovering up here, waiting for somebody to do something with it. So now I'm finished with my 2. Now I'm going to go to my next number, which is 6 times 1. So 6 times 1 equals 6. Remember, in my hand, I've got one group, and I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. One group of 6. So here's my number. So I'm going to write my 6 down here on, oh, actually, I actually just made a mistake, but I'm going to write it anyways. 6, but here's the thing. I have to add in the 1, because before, remember when we had the 12, we had 6 times 2 is 12. I had to carry the 1 way up here. If I actually just go 6 times 1 and I write in the 6, it's not going to be correct because I haven't dealt with this yet. So unfortunately, this is where we have to do addition with our multiplication. I multiply 6 times 1, have to deal with this, and now I add. So now I'm going to say 6 plus 1 is 7. So the 7 that I have is going to come right down here underneath. So the nice thing is that if I have like a nice column, numbers are in a column here, numbers that are nicely aligned in a column here. This is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of writing to solve one little basic question. So, let's now do, now we're going to multiply 2 digits by 2 digits. This is kind of tricky because it involves a lot of steps and there's going to be a lot of writing. So we can still do this, but it's just a little bit harder. So we always work our way like a backwards clock. We start at the bottom right-hand side, multiply bottom to top, then we work our way left, 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 left. And if I had a long question with 7 numbers, it would simply go all the way from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. So what I need to do first is I have to multiply 2 times 2. I like writing things out so that way I visually know what is happening every step of the way. So 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to write my 4 right underneath my 2. I'm now finished multiplying bottom to top with this number, so now I'm going to move to the left. So now I'm going to go 2 times 1. And again, I like to write it out. 2 times 1 is 2. I'm going to then take my 2 and I'm going to put it right here. So now I have, let's see, 2 times 2 is 4, but 2 times 1 is 2. Just making sure. So now I'm going to erase a lot of this stuff because I've got to do more writing and I don't want to confuse myself. So if you are doing this on a piece of paper, you could always just lightly cross it off in pencil so that you can then go back and erase your pencil marks. I'm now finished dealing with this bottom 2. The problem though is that when I finish dealing with a number and I'm going to move on to the next number, I have to add a 0. And it's super easy to forget to add in the 0, so don't worry if you do. The problem though is that if you don't remember to add it in, you're going to do the math part correctly, but the answer won't be correct because these numbers are going to be in the wrong spot. So what this does is adding the 0 pushes our numbers over a little bit because as we've now moved from this number to this number, the 0 now makes us move our answers over 1 as well. So now that I've finished with the number on the bottom right, now I'm going to move to the number on the bottom left. But I'm still going to go in the same like backwards clock, counterclockwise motion. So now I'm going to go 1 times 2, and again, I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. 1 times 2 is 2, and I write my 2 whoop, right here. I'm moving left. Now I'm finished with the 2, and I'm going to go bottom to top now, moving leftwards. 1 times 1. 1 times 1 is 1. I'm going to take my 1, and I'm going to put it right here. This is where stuff gets really hard. If you have, let's say, an English brain, right? Typically when we read a book in English, it's left to right, left to right, left to right. But what we've done is we've now we're multiplying right to left. And so visually, let me just show you what we've done. And you can see why this is so hard for us. We go right to left. We are going in this direction when we multiply. Once we get to this stage in the game, we actually have to now add top to bottom. And so our direction, our entire direction has changed. So in our brain, it's now very confusing because we are doing a lot of different things. So now I have to add my numbers top to bottom in order from right to left, which again, when we read left to right. So again, our brain is thinking like, this doesn't feel right. This feels awkward. So 4 plus 0 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. 1 plus nothing. And if there's nothing there, feel free to add a 0 because that 0 is nothing. 1 plus nothing is 1. There we are. This is how we do 2 digits by 2 digits with no carryover. All right. Okay, we now have to multiply 2 digits by 2 digits that involve carryover. Carryover is when you multiply something that becomes bigger than 9, and we can't just fit it in. Let me actually show you what that means. So like the last question, we start at the bottom right, and we multiply up and down, and then we work our way backwards. So let me write this down. So 5 times 2 equals 10. If I wrote the number 10 right here, I'm throwing off my answer because now there's too many numbers. Like really, my answer, if I had a line right down the middle, my answer should fit here. But I can't just squish in my 10. And if I write it here, then my number is in the wrong place. So this is what carryover is. It's taking our number and making it fit in the question in such a place that it'll work well later. My right-hand number goes on the right. My left-hand number, right here, whoop, goes up here on the left. It just kind of floats on the top up here. I am now finished multiplying 5 times 2. So I can cross off 5 times 2. Now, so that was that one. Now I'm going to work backwards and I'm going to go 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is 5. The problem that we have though is that we have to deal with this floating 1 that came seemingly out of nowhere. But the 1 came from this answer here, the 5 times 2. We have to deal with this extra 1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add it, which is confusing because we just multiplied. So now you're like, but why do we have to add? We're working on multiplication. I get it. Trust me, this is hard stuff. So the 1 that we have here, what we're going to do is we're going to go like this. We're going to take the 5. We're going to put it here. Here's our 5. The 1 that's up here, we're putting it over here. We're going to say plus 1. I'm going to take my answer. 5 plus 1 is 6. The 6 is going to go over here. There's a lot of arrows, and normally maybe your sheet is not going to look this crazy. To me, I need it to look like that for me to be like, that's where that came from, and that's where it went to. So let's just recap what we did here. 5 times 2 is 10. The right-hand number stays on the right. The left-hand number comes up here on the left. I then now can move to 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is 5. But I have to add in this extra floating number up here. So that comes down here. So my answer of 5 times 1 is 5. Plus this random 1 makes it 6. I write my 6 underneath the very next column that I can do. So I'm now going to erase this stuff because there's so much going on. I'm going to be definitely confused later on if I don't get rid of all of these little marks. So I now have, again, 12 by 45. I'm finished with my 5. I'm going to cross off my 5. The very next thing I do when I cross it off is I'm going to put in a 0. One of my colleagues had this cute little mnemonic device, and he actually says, he keeps in the 5, and he says, it's like, you know, X's and O's. You put in an X, you put in an O. I think that's actually super cute. So let's erase this here. So now that I'm finished with my 5, I put in a 0. I can now move on to the next number on my left. So now I'm going to multiply 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm going to take my 8 and I'm going to put it right beneath the number that I was just multiplying. Now I'm finished with that 2 again. And now I can multiply the very next number on the left, which is 1. So now I'm going to go 4 times 1. The answer is 4. I'm going to take my 4 and I'm going to put it right over here. And now we're left with this panic moment where we're like, I'm done multiplying, but I have 2 answers. Well, now what we do, this is where multiplication is really frustrating. We have to add. And here's the thing, is that when we multiplied, we were going bottom to top, and now we're going in a clockwise motion. But now when we add, we actually have to add top to bottom in a downwards motion. So even the motions itself are in a different direction, which is enough to throw us off. So we now have to add 60 to 480. So I'm going to add 0 and 0, make 0. 6 and 8, so I'm going to go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 6 plus 8 is 14. My right-hand number stays on the right. Here's my 1, so it's kind of not clear. Let me just do this again. My left-hand number comes way up here on the left. And now I can add my 4 and my 1 to make 5. So 12 times 5, hopefully is 540 if I've done this correctly. So let's move on to our next one. Okay, here is the last one that I'm going to show you. And basically any other question after this is going to be the same sort of concept. Once you can handle 3 digits, you can multiply 5 by 5 digits and so on. So the thing to remember is that when we originally did the other 2 questions, actually all of these questions, we start bottom to top and then we work our way counterclockwise through the numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 3 times 3, 3 times 2, 3 times 1. I'm going to add a 0. I'm going to move on to this one. Then I'm going to go 2 times 3, 2 times 2, 2 times 1. I'm going to add 2 zeros. Then I'm going to go 1, and I'm going to go 1 times 3, 1 times 2, 1 times 1. So I systematically go right to left, right to left, right to left. So let's take a look at this. My very first one that I'm going to do is 3 times 3 because I'm going bottom to top. So 3 times 3 is 9. I'm going to take my 9, I'm going to write it right here. Now I'm going to go on to the next number. 3 times 2. Let's write it out. 3 times 2 is 6. I'm going to write my number right here. Now I'm going to do my last number. 3 times 1. So 3 times 1 equals 3. I'm going to take my number and I'm going to write it right here. I've now finished dealing with 3. Before I cross it off though, I'm going to erase all of my lines because this is chaos and I don't want to be super confused. So I'm still left now with my 1, 2, 3 times 1, 2, 3. I'm finished with my 3. I add a 0. We add a 0 simply to push our number over because now instead of moving with this number, now I'm dealing with this number. So I'm adding a 0. So now I can start with 2 times 3. So my very first number is 2 times 3, and the answer is 6. I'm going to take my 6, I'm going to put it right here. Now I'm finished with the 3. Now I can go 2 times 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. I'm going to take my 4, and I'm going to put it right here. Now I can move to the next one, 2 times 1. So I'm going to write it here, 2 times 1 equals 2. I'm going to take my 2, and I'm going to put it right over here. Now I've finished dealing with my 2, but again, before I cross it off, I want to erase all of this because there's so much. It would just look absolute pandemonium if I left it on there. So now that I'm finished with my 2 in the middle, I can cross this off. I'm going to add a 0 for this one, and I'm going to add a 0 for this one. And now I can start. Let me just tell you, every time I move another number over, I add another number, another 0, sorry. So it would be 1 0, then it would be 2 zeros, then it would be 3 zeros, then 4 zeros, then 5 zeros, and on and on and on. So every time you multiply and you go over a number, you add an extra number. You don't just simply go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It goes 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to multiply 1 times 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. I'm going to take my 3, and I'm going to put it right here. Now I'm going to go to my next number, which is 1 times 2. The answer is 2. I'm going to take my 2. I'm going to put it right there. Now I'm going to go to my last number, which is 1 times 1. The answer is 1. And I'm going to put it right here. And you might be thinking, done. I've multiplied. And you have. You are finished with the multiplication. The problem is that we're not finished with the question. The question now, like we have 3 answers. And we're not going to decide between the answers. We're going to put them all together into one answer. So, getting rid of all my lines, I now have to add, which, trust me, as somebody who does not love math, this is really frustrating because you're like, I just multiplied and now I have to add, and there's probably going to be carryover when you have this many numbers, and it's a lot of work, but we have to do it. So, we add. And again, we spent all of this time multiplying right to left, right to left, right to left, and now we have to add directly top down, top down, top down. So again, our direction has changed, which is confusing. So now I'm going to go 9 and nothing and nothing. So 9 and 0 is 9. 6 and 6, let me show you this because again, every time we have to do carryover, it's really horrible. So 6 plus 6 is 12. So where did the numbers go? The right-hand number stays on the right. The left-hand number comes way up here and it gets plunked down on the very next number that's immediately on its left. So again, let me show you again what happened. So I'm adding 6 plus 6 is 12. The right-hand number stays on the right. The left-hand number gets right up here on the top left. So now I can add 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 plus 3, so 7, 8, 9, 10. Plus 1, oh my gosh, look at all this. Let's do this again, this is nuts. So 4 plus 3, let me show you. So 4 plus 3 is 7. Let me take my 7 and put it here. 7 plus 3 is 10. But now I have this extra 1. 10, so here's my 10 right here, plus this one equals 11. So again, I'm going to take my right-hand number, and I'm going to put it on the right. I'm going to take my left-hand number, there's too many lines here now, I'm going to put it way up here, on top of the next number that's on the left-hand side. Now I have to add these numbers together. So 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. I'm going to write my 5 here. 1 plus nothing and nothing. So some people, they look at this and they're like, no problem, I got this. 1 and nothing is 1. My mind looks at this and freaks out. I'm like, but there's nothing. I don't know what to do. Remember, if you get confused, be like, nothing is 0. 0 is nothing. Add in a 0, because for some reason your mind can be like, oh yeah, 1 plus 0, I got this. But if you see a blank, you're like, but what's blank? 1 plus nothing and nothing is 1. So this is our answer. So our original question was 123 times 123. Our answer is 15129. There we go. So again, keep in mind, if I had, let's erase all this. And let's say I had a 4-digit question. And it was like 1, 2, 3, 4 times 5, 6, 7, 8. when I'm adding my zeros, keep in mind, so I'd go 8 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Then I'd add a 0. I'd go 7 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. I'd put in 2 zeros. Then I'd go 6 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And I'm going to add in 3 zeros. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And so on and so forth. Okay, so every time you go over a number, you add in an extra 0. So hope that helps and good luck.